The gaming industry is in the best but also worst state ever. Right now, we're seeing the aftermath of the COVID craze, with a growing live service fatigue after a series of embarrassing failures, with Concord being the crown jewel. The Western AAA gaming space is also on a steady decline, with ballooning costs, stagnant quality, and ever-growing amount of layoffs, despite record-high profits. Any game can be turned into the battleground of the online culture war, destroying any sense of community that was or to be built. And esport is just still doing esport things, i.e. burning money. Except now you can gamble. So, that's great. And while all of this is happening, smaller European and Eastern studios have been making waves year after year with hits upon hits. Every year there are good games from those studios that just absolutely sweep the internet, and as a gamer you're spoiled for choice. They're good games year round. And I think that this disconnect is obviously not a coincidence. If anything, it's a sign that just like the culture, the gaming industry is undergoing a violent change. But here's why I think it's a good thing. To understand how we got here and where things are going, we must go back to the early 2010s. As the first decade of the 21st century was wrapping up, gaming was projected to become another giant in the entertainment industry alongside cinema and music. Games such as World of Warcraft, Halo, yeah, remember Halo? And Call of Duty were so popular they breached the veil of a niche hobby and entered the mainstream.
World of Warcraft, I need to play!
Our demo was set up right over by the...
While there was corporate presence in the gaming industry during the 90s and 2000s, such as Microsoft with Xbox and Nintendo or Sony, the space was mostly comprised of passionate software developers that wanted to make something cool for themselves and a small audience. This was irreversibly changed in the 2010s. The gaming studios now adhere to not only gamers' interests, but shareholders and investors as well. As venture capital firms and tech giants smelled money in the water, they inserted themselves into gaming through acquisitions of well-known studios and publishers. The most notable purchases were Blizzard's in 2015 by King Entertainment, the maker of Candy Crush, Riot's by Tencent in 2011, ZeniMax Media in 2010 by Providence Equity Partner, and Mojang's by Microsoft. This also causes IP consolidation among the major corporations. Surely nothing can go wrong from that.
It's me, Phil Chancellor. What up, bang? Today, I'm so excited to talk to you guys about all the games we're canceling here at Xbox.
While the sales divisions was busy taking over the industry, there's also another calamity brewing in the culture. Leading up to the 2010s, the West experienced a significant cultural shift towards more left-leaning values. Now, this is a can of worms in and of itself. What's important to us are the consequences. One of these is the Me Too movement, and the other is Gamergate. For the sake of the video, I'll just highlight the impact these movements have left on gaming culture. Me Too started as a feminist movement against sexual abusers in entertainment industries. To a male-dominated field like gaming, you can imagine the absolute firestorm that was Me Too.
It's time for the milk thief.
But eventually, the movement started to claim innocent victims. The most notable example of this being Chris Avellone, the terrific writer behind KOTOR 2 and New Vegas. His career was severely damaged by false accusation of sexual assaults by two former colleagues. But the event that forever altered the course of gaming for the worse was undoubtedly Gamergate in 2014. Originally, it was a movement by gamers concerned about ethics in gaming journalism, because some outlets were giving favorable coverages to game studios they have a connection with. Soon, however, it ballooned into a full-scale culture war, driving a wedge between game developers, game journalists, and gamers. The whole thing got so big that Anita Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn ended up in front of the UN crying about sexism in video games. Looking back, it's quite absurd, isn't it? Gamergate introduced contemporary politics into gaming, and if you want to be real schizo about it, it's also a catalyst for Trump's victory in 2016, but that's a crackpot theory for another day. For now, gamers are sexist, racist, and ableist monsters that should be shunned. Tried and true themes and designs were abandoned because they aren't inclusive or progressive enough. Remember what I told you about the growing corporate interest in gaming industry? Now you have a creative space driven almost purely by profit margin and is obsessed with the message of diversity and progress. On top of that, you have a class of moral arbiter that lecture gamers and shame developers into doing what they deem is appropriate. The stage is now set for the enshittification of gaming. It started off slowly, with game studios and publishers committed to a yearly release schedule. By rotating through a number of studios like Activision, or releasing the same fucking game as in the case of EA, this model aims to squeeze out the most profit in the shortest amount of time invested. The quality is, not a concern.
Yo, Dark, a little help here.
Yeah, I can't do anything. I'm clicking attack, nothing's happening.
Activision and Ubisoft managed the impossible and made their franchises lame. I'm sure you can remember the time when there's a new Call of Duty or Assassin's Creed game every year. In hindsight, this strategy was anything but sustainable. The games that applied this release strategy suffered heavily in terms of quality towards the middle and end of the 2010s. These games started to take more time and money to make, so naturally, the quality would stagnate or even regress in the same time frame. However, when you are at the mercy of shareholders and quarterly earning reports,
Let's up those numbers! That's not good!
here's a little business question. What do you think will make more money? Releasing a game that will be relevant for a year with 90% of sales happening in the first month? Or releasing a game that gets regular updates and an in-game store? If you're lucky, the game will be so good it gets popular over time, generating more sales and more in-game purchases. And thus, game as a service, or live service games as we call them now, was born. Titles like Destiny, Overwatch, and Fortnite were the first of their kind. A game being dependent on its audience is not unique. MMOs have been around since forever, but the key difference here is that live service games are not community driven like MMOs. The social aspect plays almost no role in the experience, unlike a lot of old MMOs where that's the whole point. In fact, these live service games act as commercial platforms for developers to sell shiny pixels to their audience. Live service games are not products, but services that will end eventually at the service provider's discretion. You don't buy these games, you rent a license. Shout out Stop Killing Games. Logically, you would feel inclined to ask about the in-game purchases you've made. To that, I'd like to quote the brilliant minds at Ubisoft.
But nothing is written in stone, and at some point the service may be discontinued. Nothing is eternal.
Okay, let's take a moment and think. Imagine yourself as a publisher. You already found your golden goose, your money printer, right? But what if you can make even more money? Gaming was hitting the mainstream alongside YouTube. Every year there's a new crop of kids entering the hobby, begging to be monetized. What is the evergreen money printer that's easy to implement in the live service model? How do you get kids to gamble without it being a crime? Well, you can only have so many shiny things in your online stores. Introducing the loot box. The concept of loot box is not new. Open a mystery box where all the rewards are randomized. MapleStory did it in 2004 already. EA saw how lucrative the model was and brought it over to their FIFA franchise in 2008. Since then, that has been EA's main money generator, raking in billions upon billions of dollars a year. Loot box has all the excitement of gambling without actually being gambling. Well, technically, the player can't win anything with real value. Every time you buy a loot box, you're burning your money. Even if you decide to sell the account with the loot later, it still won't recoup your investment. That way, you can't chase your losses and get sucked into an endless spiral that ends with you re-rolling your genetics. Needless to say, this business model saw industry-wide adoption. Virtually any game that had a multiplayer element had a variation of loot boxes, from the weapon cases of CSGOs, to battle packs in Battlefield 4, to supply drops in Advanced Warfare. It was everywhere. All game studios have found a clean way to safely siphon money from the impressionable audience by abusing a legal gray zone. On top of that, Sony and Xbox pioneered a subscription model where you have to pay a fee for online services. That means that on top of your internet, you have to pay to play with other players too. As compensation for the obvious ass-fucking that these companies did to their audience, they offered a few free games a month, so some freebie. This inspired EA and Ubisoft to adopt the same strategy. Now, they didn't have the hardware advantage that Xbox and Sony had, but that didn't stop them from putting up a subscription service anyway. Another fun thing about corporate presence in gaming is that the investors wanted to have their own versions of American sport too. Esport was propped up with the same model as traditional sport, except it doesn't work like that in gaming culture at all. Esport is driven by personality and community, something that you can't throw money at to emulate. The fighting game community is the strongest proof of this. Meanwhile, any artificial effort by the developer to chase after a pro scene will inevitably fracture the fanbase and ruin the fun for many casual players. Overwatch bled out over 4 years because they made this fatal mistake. While the corporatism was hollowing out the gaming industry from the inside, the consequence of the left-leaning cultural shift started to manifest as well. We slowly saw more and more attacks on male-focused aspects of gaming. Attractive female characters are sexist and objectifying women, thus they can't exist anymore.
Because this is what it does, it appeals to like the male fantasy.
Traditional heroic tales are not inclusive enough. All games need more representation so they look like modern-day California. Shit-talking in-game is offensive, teabagging perpetuates rape culture. In short, we were shoved into the longhouse. Companies started to display the logos on top of Pride flag in June. There were more PR events that promoted social justice. Game journalists waged a war on male audience of popular games. The 2010s ended with the gaming industry being on the cusp of its largest reckoning yet. I think all of us are familiar with how the second decade of this century started. The pandemic swept across the world, we all got stuck at home, life seemingly came to a halt. But for the gaming industry, to say that this period was a gold rush is a severe understatement. As the 2010s approached its end, the cracks in gaming were starting to show. The yearly release cadence killed the excitement for Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed. Many studios that were known for single-player games pivoted to multiplayer, with mediocre to downright catastrophic results. Fallout 76 destroyed Bethesda's already dwindling reputation, while Redfall completely killed Arcane Austin. BioWare tried to make a multiplayer, but changed halfway through, and we got Dragon Age Veilguard, which alleviated the entire Dragon Age team from their work at BioWare. The COVID lockdown provided a temporary but huge band-aid for the gaping wound on the industry. Since everyone was stuck at home, they turned to video game and streaming services to pass time. Sales figures saw a sharp increase across the board. It was the perfect time to bring out the live service. I like to call this the sloppening. Fortnite has proven that the live service formula, where the battle pass is the method. So for the next 4 years, we saw a deluge of the same model of content delivery unleashed upon us. Now of course, as with any gold rush, there are always winners and losers. We have the Warzone, the New World, and the Marvel Rivals, but we also got some Concord, some X-Define, and some Skulls and Bones too. And the latter group outnumbers the former one massively. The side effect of game as a service is that it turns gaming into an economy of attention. Instead of people buying a lot of games and go through their backlog at their leisure, now they got a second job. There are daily events, daily quests, daily activity limit, all the stops to make the player log in as often as possible, because then they're more likely to spend money in the in-game store. As you can see, none of this benefits the audience. Every single thing I've mentioned until now was to profit the studio at the expense of their fans. The industry, for the most part, no longer represents gamers' interests. That's not to say that there's no game with a healthy monetization scheme. Deep Rock Galactic and Warframes are shining examples, but they're just that, exceptions. The norm of the industry is to exploit the young, impressionable audience with no impulse control. That's only on the commercial side. The actual content quality also sank to the bottom of the ocean. Now I don't want to be the anti-woke type and scream at the side of a woman or a black person. But it's undeniable that the enforced diversity in gaming has been inconsequential at best and disastrous at worst. The first and most jarring change was the extinction of attractive female characters. Gaming was and still is a male-dominated space. And men like to look at pretty women, be they real or pixels. Some women do too, believe it or not. But ever since the mid-2010s, there was an effort to make female characters as unappealing as possible. I'm talking side shave head, seemingly botched facial scan with somewhat uncanny facial animation, and built like a fucking fridge. The last time an Ubisoft game has a good-looking woman, it was Evie Fry from AC Syndicate, a game from 10 years ago. This was a trend across the board too, with Overwatch 2, Concord, Redfall, and Saint Row Reboot, and so many more. It's hard not to attribute it to an ideological motivation, because Japanese games constantly pump out characters that look amazing. What's even funnier is that whenever there was a criticism about the appearance of a female character, the journalist defense force would assemble and regurgitate the same 3 articles about how gamers are sexist, misogynistic pigs and deserve nothing good. But the rot didn't stop there. Not only was hot women illegal, cool stories too. Saint Row was the edgier GTA clone back in the day, with characters like this.
Where's Green?
Dropping lines like this.
Okay, so we go and do some damage. How did the VKs get blamed?
Put these on.
I'm yellow enough as it is, Dex.
But the reboot have us follow a bunch of limp dick losers that bitch and moan about their student loans.
The wage slave is back.
How was your first day? Were the other mercenaries nice to you?
You know, as far as hired killers go, I'd give him a 7.
You look like you could use a mimosa.
Thanks, Eli.
Seriously, how's the job?
It's the murder business. The fundamentals don't change, just the uniform.
I can tell you love it.
Okay. I don't have to love it, I have to pay my student loans.
Amen.
Forspoken was literally about black girl magic, and Dragon Age Veilguard was the gender therapy you never knew you needed. The worst thing is that, if approached tastefully, I think a lot of these themes can be quite touching, if not compelling, but the people who write these stories are so goddamn lame and incompetent that their idea of cool is just smarmy Reddit clapback and a lot of swearing. And so all the representation in these games felt like caricatures instead of acknowledgement of the groups they're supposed to represent. In a fair and just world, we could have a normal conversation about this issue, but thanks to gaming journalists, all quality issues were hand-waved away because gamers are all kind of is-phobic. And here we are, deep into August with the layoff ongoing, gaming projects getting canned left and right, gaming journalism an empty husk of its former self. While mainstream Western gaming was busy shooting itself in the foot, smaller European and Eastern studios started to reveal their hands. Amidst the live service sloppening, Elden Ring happened. From Software went ahead and dropped a nuke on the gaming industry. I feel like enough has been said about that game, just look at this graph. High number good, yes. The next year, Larian Studio decided to hit the industry with a second nuke, and this one's even more baffling than the last. For the longest time, publishers have tried to move away from single-player games, even more so with turn-based RPG. The arguments were that those games are out of fashion and gamers want something more dynamic like multiplayers with shiny skins. And Baldur's Gate 3 became the biggest game of 2023. It was so good that developers in the industry had to go on Twitter to tell you not to expect the same thing from them. To rub salt on the injury, Game Science bodied the industry in 2024 with Black Myth Wukong. Once again, it was a smash hit that seemingly came from nowhere. 3 consecutive years, all dominated by single-player games. This completely shattered the lies that gaming publisher wanted to sell you. There's always been a huge demand for story-driven single-player games. Just this year, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 and Expedition 33 were released, and they're both amazing games with equally amazing sales figures. Black Myth Wukong also opened the door for more Chinese games to the Western market, with games like Bloodletter looming over the horizon. So that's not to mention mid-sized games like Stellar Blades and Palworld, and every 3 months there's a new party game developed by like one guy that takes over the internet. There are always a few good games that you can get into immediately, with the genres being more diverse than ever. Even if you're a multiplayer enjoyer, there's still really good options. Marvel Rivals is now practically what Overwatch was in 2016. Escape from Tarkov is still doing its thing, and the new Battlefield 6 is showing promises despite still being in open beta. From the perspective of a gamer, gaming is flourishing now more than ever. I think the future is clear for the gaming industry. The presence of corporations and their funding is no longer a success guarantee, or even a safety net at this point. Western studios, especially the American ones, are almost incapable of making games that once made them industry giants. If they don't do a massive 180s on everything, they will be replaced by smaller, more agile studios with better vision, management, and planning. The industry is also going back to celebrating beautiful women and very masculine stories. Any sort of language policing, social messaging, or censorship are being completely and wholeheartedly rejected by gamers. All the gaming journalism outlets are dying or have kicked the bucket, with the writers being forced to seek gainful employment once again. If ever, right? And looking at the recent video game shows, I have a very good feeling for the future. It feels like gaming is finally about fun again. And, well, what can I say? Total gamer victory. That being said, let me know what games you're playing or are looking forward to. And if you like the video, like and subscribe. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!